At this time, we would like to officially begin the event by inviting Mr. Chu Ho Kin, Project Director, to come forward and share his thoughts. Mr. Chu Ho Kin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, MC. Good morning to our distinguished guest, Dr. Lee Hui Ling, our beloved advisor of American Chemical Society University Science Malaysia International Student Chapter, Dr. Margaret, lecturer and head of the program of Quest International University, Dr. Yvonne Chu, lecturer from Xiamen University, all my committee members and my fellow participants. Welcome to Speaking in Science workshop, exploring the challenges of science communication. First of all, I am very happy to welcome the speakers and all the participants for joining this program on this lovely morning. I want to thank my advisor of ACS USM, Dr. Lee Hui Ling, and also Dr. Lo Siu Chun for supporting us to make this workshop successful. I would like to thank also our beloved speaker, Dr. Margaret and Dr. Yvonne Chu for spending their time with us to share their knowledge. Next, I also want to thank all my committee members for ensuring the smoothness and success of this workshop. Without them, Speaking in Science workshop would not succeed and be here today with all of you. For your information, Speaking in Science workshop is a platform to practice the skill of informing, educating, sharing, and raising awareness of science communication among the students. The objective of this workshop is to enhance the ability of students to communicate among one another, to train the students in conveying knowledge and scientific concept to non-expert, and to create awareness among students about the importance of science communication. Last but not least, I hope that this workshop can gain your knowledge shared by our speakers, and hope that it will be very helpful for those who have joined the workshop today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chu. Next, we'd like to invite Dr. Lee Hui Ling, advisor of American Chemical Society, University Science Malaysia International Student Chapter, to come forward and share her thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Alfred, for your kind introductions. Good morning to our distinguished speakers, Dr. Margaret Sivapragasam and Dr. Yvonne Chu, Tan Siok Ling, Director of ACS USM Student Chapter, Chu Hawking, Project Director of Speaking in Science Workshop, ESCO, and members of ACS USM Student Chapter, colleagues and fellow students. First and foremost, welcome to the Speaking in Science workshop to all participants. I am Dr. Lee Hui Ling, the co-advisor for the ACS USM International Student Chapter. Thank you for signing up in this workshop. I'm going to make this speech short and sweet. The idea of organizing this workshop was mooted last semester. However, due to COVID-19, it got postponed to this semester. We understand the importance of science communication these days, especially to the public. Communication has to be simple and concise to convey the right message to the receivers. As such, I'm very happy to see a huge participation from all of you, and I thank you for your time. I wish to take this opportunity to thank the organizing committees led by Chu Hawking and his team, as well as the main ACS USM Student Chapter Executive Committees for a great job done. I also wish to thank the two speakers for accepting the invitation. Both are rising star researchers and excel well in science communication. I have known Dr. Margaret for her active involvement in ACS Malaysia chapter, and now she involved in Sembang Science. Dr. Yvonne Chu was formerly our USM student, and welcome back to your alma mater. Lastly, I hope all of you will learn a lot from this workshop and have fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Without wasting any time, let us dive into our workshop with the team exploring the challenges of science communication by inviting two of our most phenomenal and successful speakers. But before we begin, let me give a brief introduction about our first captivating speaker, Dr. Yvonne Chu Suen Lan. For your information, Dr. Yvonne Chu completed her Bachelor of Science with honor in pure chemistry from University Science Malaysia in 2014 and her PhD in chemistry from Newcastle University, UK in 2018. She is a STEM ambassador, a member of the Royal Society of Chemistry, RSC, and a council member of Institute Kimia Malaysia, IKM. She is also a science communication enthusiast and has been actively involved in various public engagement events since 2010. She is an award winner of Element 107 Borium in IUPAC's periodic table of younger chemists, has one of the three Malaysian represented in 2019. She runs a blog yvonnechu.tumblr.com about her journey of becoming a scientist, where she documented her STEM involvement in detail. To get a deep insight into her topic, everyone, please join me in welcoming the first speaker of today, Dr. Yvonne Chu.
Hello. Hi, everybody. May I share screen? Great.
Yes, Doctor.
Okay, I will share screen then. Okay, hello everybody. My name is Yvonne and I am currently a lecturer at Salmon University, Malaysia. Today I'm here to talk about role of physical communication in science communication. But before I actually go into that, I just want to check the response with everybody. Is everybody able to see the slides correctly? Hear me correctly? Could you see me correctly?
Yes, Doctor.
Great. In that case, when I ask a question, is it possible for people to type in the chat box and unmute? Can I hear a yay from someone? No?
Yes, Doctor. They can type in the chat box.
Okay, that's great. So without further ado, let's begin then. So when we talk about science communication, I would want you to imagine yourself right now in a grocery store or a supermarket, right? Which aisle would you spend the most time in? Is it the snack aisle? Is it the toiletries? Is it the fresh produce aisle? Well, chances are you would find yourself in the aisles that engage your senses. Interestingly, when you enter a supermarket, a lot of times you're drawn by the visual of fresh produce. If they're very fresh, you'd be engaged in a sense that you will be attracted to want to pick up an apple, for example. Or then when that's a visual thing that you're seeing. After that, you will be drawn by the smell of fresh baking products, for example, a croissant or a roast chicken. And the next thing you know, you're right in front of a promoter that is trying to promote a new product to you, right? Interestingly, that transition from walking into the supermarket, wanting to get something that you're intended to, and finally realizing that you're ending up in front of a promoter trying to get things promoted to you, tasting food. That is something interesting because the promoter is able to draw you to their booth without having to talk to you at all. Those kind of connection that they have with you is through physical communication. Their eye contact from you're walking nearby and they catch your eye and they would have a very welcoming smile, or they would have something like very welcoming gestures, come try the food, or they would take something to you, they would give you a taste of their product, and you would be drawn and you would listen to what they're trying to speak. So that transition from entering the supermarket to staying in front of the promoter, listening to them speak, is communication in a way. And we would like to apply that in science communication, because if that person is very good in promoting something new especially, you would be drawn and you would buy. It's similar to science communication. If you are drawn to that very good speaker, you will eventually be attracted and want to listen more. So that is that would bring me back to the topic of physical communication in science communication, which will be delivered in 4 different puzzle pieces. One being the basics, 2 being the challenges and solution, 3 being physical communication and science communication tips and tricks, and the 4th being take-home messages. So what exactly is physical communication? Guys, what exactly is physical communication? Can I get some response?
Physical
Hello?
communication, I think we'll be talking to each other face to face.
Right? Physical communication, like mentioned before, kind of reminds you of the promoter, right? A promoter I mentioned that they actually use eye contact, very welcoming gestures. They nod when you speak. They try to make you understand. Those are physical communication, non-verbal cues that should be coupled with verbal communication, as mentioned. So nodding or having very good facial expressions are part of physical communication. Then we have gestures like handshake or welcoming gestures like come on in. You will be drawn by these gestures. And lastly, in terms of eye contact or body postures, would help you deliver or convey like what I'm using my hand to do right now. Note that these kind of physical communication doesn't always just apply to the people speaking, it also applies to the listener. So if we were to stand in front of another person, trying to get through, trying to speak to that person, and if that person responds with a very bored face or like crossed arms, things like that, you would know that these are cues or clues that the person is maybe not interested or bored in what you're speaking. And picking up on that, you will want to kind of change the way you communicate to get their attention. So physical communication in that sense does not only apply to the speaker. So what is science communication? What is science communication then? So science communication is a way to disseminate scientific knowledge to an audience of all sorts, but it can be done through written, whether if it's a blog or publications or demonstrations, a news article, and then it can be coupled with visual aids. So a lot of times you see visual aids online are in the form of infographics, posters, they could be experiments, snippets of videos, etc. And what we're doing today, an oral presentation. It can be an in-person event when it comes to science communication. It could be a podcast that people listen to or virtual events like this. Focus will be on the oral today and a little bit about visual, but mostly on the nonverbal cues that would help you in your oral presentation. So in science communication, it is very, very important to know your audience. Who are your audience? What are they like? Are they young? Are they of a certain age group? Are they technologically advanced? Do they like social media? Can you catch any obvious clues from your conversation or conversation with them? Or could you see from their dress codes? Are they doctors? Are they people with scientific knowledge, etc.? So when you want to communicate, it's very important to know your target audience because they will be the one that you will be targeting and they will be the one listening to what you're trying to speak. Here are just basics that I would like you to go through. And also, in terms of science communication, it is very important to know what your goals are. Why do you even want to communicate science? Because knowing that would help you have a brighter understanding, like a clearer understanding of why you're doing this. And after understanding it, you will be able to cater your content to ensure that the audience bring home a certain message that you're trying to convey. So science communication can be done because of you're wanting to share the knowledge and understanding about certain science to make people appreciate science in a way. It could be done because you just want to share the exciting research findings of your, like a new paper that you've published and you want people to know the content of that paper. Or it could even be done because you want to influence other people's opinion. You want to be perhaps a policy changer, or you want to propose something to make a change in the policy, for example. These are science communication goals, but I would say the most important science communication goal that we all should know and should have, I couldn't emphasize this more like I can emphasize this more, is that we should always enjoy the process of communicating, of sharing the excitement of our passion in communicating and the fun. Right? Science communication is fun because you get to see people light up when they get what you're saying. So I've also mentioned that it's important to know your goals because that will shape what you want the audience to take home. If you're delivering a new knowledge, they would bring home a new knowledge. If you're telling them a new idea or a new method of doing things, they would bring home that new idea and actually implement it in their household. Even better, if you can inspire them to do something greater or something great. That brings me to the second puzzle piece today, the challenges and solutions, because before you actually get into something, it's very important to know what are their challenges, what are you getting into, basically. So the challenges of physical communication and science communication, a mouthful, would be physical barriers. COVID-19 itself, pandemic, actually brought us an additional physical barrier, which is this computer screen right now. You're staring at it, I'm staring at it. But if it's not because of COVID-19, we would have been face to face and there would not be any physical barriers. But let me tell you more about what other physical barriers there are in the next slide. For now, apart from physical barriers, there could be language barriers. In terms of gestures, for example, if you're using a thumbs up, in some countries it might mean good, right? Great. But in some other countries, if you put this up, like Middle Eastern country, you'd be surprised because it means the same as your middle finger. So it's kind of like a cultural thing or a language barrier that you have a different standpoint. And that is a bit tricky when you're using gestures in that way. So when there is a difference in kind of viewpoint, you would want to consider taking a step back and listening. I will tell you more about the solutions shortly. And always remember to skip the jargons because jargons don't attract people. It just turns people off. People just shut their doors because they can't understand what you're saying. And they might just get confused or get misunderstandings from there. Also, in terms of emotional barriers and taboos relating to, for example, religion or sexuality or racism, these are things that you should not, or even if you want to touch it, you have to make sure that you are playing it safe. You are not triggering an explosion or a time bomb. Physical barriers are anything that stands between you and the audience. So you being able to communicate to the audience is effective communication, but anything that stands in between you and the audience would make the communication ineffective. And those barriers could be noise. It could be a very noisy environment on the streets. It could be the environment not very conducive for science communication. Like there are a lot of blockage and you can't actually reach the people. That distance that's created, even online, like virtual events like this, we're actually distances apart. And distance is one part of physical barriers. Information overflow. If you tell people a lot of information, you kind of mess with their brains in a way that they would just close and don't want to listen to you anymore. Medium is important too. The medium in the sense, it's like the software that you're using. You need to make sure that you know how to use that software to be able to effectively communicate to the other person. So when we talk about challenges, we should always turn those challenges into opportunities when it comes to finding solutions to those challenges. So you need to take advantage of those challenges and turn them into opportunities. Like, for example, when we talk about COVID-19, right? We're facing this computer screen. Yes, it is ineffective in a way that we can't physically meet, and you can't feel me, I can't feel you either. But the good thing about this physical barrier is that you get the chance to show videos, to show things that are recorded all together as a complete set. You get to demonstrate certain things and people can clearly see on their screens. Right, in terms of physical barriers like noise, you would want to mute them if it's a virtual event. If it's a physical event, you would want to stand closer to the person. And that closeness actually could enhance a communication, because the person, it feels like you're speaking directly to them instead of speaking to thin air. Right? Distances, virtual interactions like this, it's important to turn on your camera because you get to see the other person. You get to feel what they're feeling in terms of their facial expressions. If there's a problem with environment, you would take advantage of the environment and objects around you to make sure that you utilize those objects. For example, if I have a lot of bottles in front of me, I would use that to communicate, tell people about water, about how bottled water are made of plastic, how different things, just use things around you to communicate. And if there's a lot of information overflow, you would want to focus on 3 to 4 takeaways, which is what we're doing later on today. In terms of language viewpoint or cultural differences, it's important to communicate and take note. Viewpoint differences, for example, if somebody disagrees with what you're saying, it's important to take note of that, because the next thing you know, you might be able to tackle the same problem through their point of view. So they give you a different perspective of seeing things, because you're so indulged in seeing things your way that you might have overlooked what other people are saying. So having to like communicate your research and having opposing views about your research, it's going to open up a lot of thoughts or perceptions that you can then use to tweak your way of delivery. Cultural differences, it's important to find similarities and discuss it with an open mind. Most importantly, communicate. Lastly, in terms of the third solutions for emotional barriers, taboos, and jargon, it's important to listen and watch out for cues. If you talk about something sensitive and you see their face suddenly turn black, or if you see them just zoning out, then it's your time to stop. It's your time to turn the things around and listen to what they have to say. Yeah, and be open-minded about it. In terms of jargon, always use it only when necessary. Don't use it, don't impose it to other people or use it in front of other people just to sound like you're smarter or more professional in a way. That would bring me to my third puzzle piece of today. Just to check, is everybody still with me? Okay. So it's very important to start any form of science communication with stories, because everybody likes a good story. A story that starts with challenges and then how the superhero ends up saving the world and they leave happily ever after, those kind of stories. I know it's kind of bored, it's for some people, but for others, it might be a point where it triggers a lot of good memories. When we talk about science storytelling though, it actually means using real people stories to telling real people stories. You need to put a human face on what you do, for example, and you need to be able to be yourself, be authentic in your delivery. I still remember when I was doing my PhD, I went to a workshop, one-to-one workshop with a mentor. So I scheduled like a half an hour appointment with them to see what's wrong with my presentation. So I was preparing a presentation for a seminar, a PhD seminar. So I brought my presentation slides to that PhD seminar, to that mentoring session. And that mentor told me to present it for 15 minutes, and I did. And right after, I was during that presentation, I was actually trying very hard trying my best to be professional, trying my best to sound professional, trying to use technical terms so that I feel like I'm smarter than anyone else in the room, so that I feel like I'm doing real science. But in actual fact, he stopped me halfway through my talk and he said, what are you trying to achieve? And I said, I am trying my best to sound professional. I know that this is how scientists are doing in conferences. And I know a lot of people look up to those scientists with the ability to use very technical terms, to explain them correctly, things like that. And then he said something that kind of hits me very, very hard. He said, Why are you trying to be someone you're not? What makes you think that if you throw all these jargons to people that you feel smarter and other people would think that you're smarter? The communication would only work if you communicate and it sticks with the other person. And most importantly, during that entire process, you need to be who you are. You need to have your own style. You need to present it in your own way, in a way that you will be able to get things through and people would understand what you're speaking. So all in all, the story, the kind of lesson behind that story is that you need to be authentic in your delivery. You need to be yourself. Don't try to be someone you're not. And sometimes it's important to tell your story, setting the scene with challenges, and tell people how you actually get through that to be where you are now. That would bring me to one of my events back in 2015 called the Big Ideas event at 7 Stories. So 7 Stories is a location which is a center for children's book. So in that event, many researchers actually had to present their research to children, but with the use of a story. So I had to explain my research to younger kids of, I said, 11, less than 11 years old. And the kids it's very hard to communicate your science with a kid if you can't connect with them. So I used a sketch that I drew. The one that you see in the picture isn't actually the final version, but it's the draft that I made before it actually turned into a graphically better version. So what happens is you need to tell your story so that people can connect with you because people know that you're real. I told my story of how my childhood has impacted my life in a way that I like plants and I know that the earth is undergoing a lot of global warming issues, and I want to make my artificial photosynthesis. I know it's a technical term, but what it means is a photosynthesis machine. Like plants, it can photosynthesize, and I like to do a device that would mimic that. And that I would tell people about my research and then how I saved the world to hopefully one day play a part in saving the world. Yeah. So that was the story behind that 7 stories. The second method is emotion or topic of interest. When you're talking to people, it's important to catch them at their connection, emotional connection. It can be, for example, if you're talking about protein entanglements or a chaotic system or a proteins or a polymer, you can kind of let them visualize a cat being tangled with Christmas lights. That is a very difficult situation. And because very often cats get trapped with something, so telling people about that would actually trigger some memories of their own. If you were to talk to people about masks, they know how difficult it is to wear a mask and talk. And you can use the mask to start the connection and then pull it into talking about COVID-19, talking about how diseases spread, for example. And you can even use like a sleepover during Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve where there's fireworks, right? You can even use that to talk about fireworks. Instead of just telling people about what fireworks is in terms of their science, you can say, okay, do you remember that last New Year's Eve you were there, you watched a very nice display of fireworks? Do you know what they are? Do you know what fireworks is what fireworks is made of? And you should also convey it by telling them why they should care. So that brings me to my kind of event again. In 2016, I participated in an event called Soapbox Science on the streets of Newcastle. So it's in the UK, on the streets, and they put a box in front of the street. So I just stepped on that box and waiting for people to come to me, for me to explain my research to them. It's kind of weird because nobody in their right minds would just walk up to you and listen to you, right? So my strategy was to use toys. I love Legos. I love toys. I'm a kid by myself. So I put out a lot of toys in front of my booth, like at my soapbox, and hoped that it would attract children. And it did. So when children are excited, they would pull their parents along because they want to play that toy. Right? Indirectly, you pull a client over because you attracted their kid, and now you have an adult there that is your target audience. So not only do you have to lower down yourself when you're talking to kids, engaging them with things that they like toys, you can actually use toys to explain that research. I was trying to explain about polymer, and I told them, oh, hey, do you know about this lady over here? Do you know what it's made of? Do you know that I make something similar in the lab using things like that? So you can start the conversation. You can start a connection with other people by using things that you know or think that they will like, something like that. So it worked. I was able to connect with the kids, as you can see in the pictures. And I mean, in terms of the difficulty, it might not be as difficult at it, not much about the science, but it gets across, the message gets across. In terms of engaging the five senses though, it's important because like the promoter that I've mentioned at the start of this event, I mentioned about taste, sight, hearing, all those are things that would draw you to a promoter at a supermarket. And these are things that you would use to draw children's attention, to engage them, make the science stick with them through these demos. Which would bring me to two of my events again in 2017 Makers Fair, the one on the left, where I was explaining Mission Starlight, which is talking about materials that would protect you from UV rays. So you're using different props. You let the audience that is in front of you play around with those things. They experiment themselves, and then you explain the science that's underlying. The one on the right is Light for Life. It's an event, I don't quite remember, I think it's 2015, about renewable energy. So I said that I like to do photosynthesis machine, right? So my research is towards that direction, artificial photosynthesis or man-made photosynthesis. So we kind of use that. We kind of explain that firstly by engaging with the kid with extraction of chlorophyll as an experiment to start them off, to give them a lab coat so that they feel like they're doing science. I mean, they are doing science. And then from there, explain to them from their point of view, explain what the process is and how it's linked to the research that you're doing. So always, always, always customize your delivery. There aren't any one size fit alls. All you need to do is practice. It's a trial and error process. So if you find that something don't work, try again. If it works, it's time to jot down because you might want to use that in the next test run. Another thing that I want to remind you of is analogy. Well, in my teaching or in my science communication, I like to use analogies. What do I mean by analogy? Analogy are something that you use it to of similar nature, to use that to explain as a starting point. So tapping into unfamiliar grounds is daunting, but tapping into familiar grounds, you're able to help them digest the knowledge. So if I were to say anabolism is the synthesis of complex molecules in living organisms from simpler ones together, blah, 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 will you be able to catch that? Come on, tell me. The answer is you can, because anabolism can be explained with something even simpler. Everybody watched Frozen. Everybody knows that Anna want to build a snowman. So anabolism is the building up of a snowman. So you're building larger molecules from smaller pieces. Catabolism, on the other hand, cat, right? Catabolism, cats like to scratch, cats like to destroy things. I mean, not all cats, but the ones that you see on the internet does like to destroy things. And the destruction of things, the breakdown of larger molecules to smaller molecules are catabolism. So if you use analogy, like Lego to explain thin layer chromatography like this, then you will be able to help people digest it because people will be able to use something that they're familiar with and then associate the memory with that familiar things. Okay, guess that brings me to the end, nearing the end, with 4 take-home messages. First and foremost, always turn challenges into opportunities. If you can't get through challenges, then think about ways to get through it, turning that into an opportunity for you to gain something from it. Always be authentic in your delivery. be yourself. Yourself would shine through. You being yourself would make people want to listen to you. Create that emotional bond. It's important to connect with other people, whether if it's the use of props, whether if it's a connection through eye contact, and then starting with displaying of props like Lego pieces, explaining to them, let them imagine. These are things that would actually connect with other people and create that emotional bond to help people want to listen to you. And last but not least, always have fun sharing your science, because that's most important. And that should be the goal of science communication. With that, I thank you very much for listening. And please feel free to reach out if you want to collaborate or if you have any interesting ideas for events. I would like to hear from you. You can scan that QR code at the bottom right. That would bring you to all my social media accounts. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. I'm done.
Thank you, Dr. Yvonne Chu, for taking time out of your busy schedule. Those were words of gold, and I'm sure all the participants have enjoyed the talk just now. Please stay tuned for the next session. Participants are informed that there will be a Q&A session after the forum. Participants can put forward their question in the chat box or unmute your mic during the Q&A session. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will proceed to our second speaker, Dr. Margaret Sivaprakasan. For your information, Dr. Margaret is a lecturer and head of program at Quest International University, Perak. In 2017, she was awarded the Science Finder CAS Future Leader by American Chemical Society. She was placed on the periodic table of younger chemists, IUPAC's 100 representing Yttrium in 2019. She is honored with the title Super Female by Female Magazine, where she was selected as the top 45 women in Malaysia, 100 scientists of Malaysia, and she is also a Cortex Shikan Award recipient. Dr. Margaret is an affiliate member of the Young Scientist Network Academy of Sciences Malaysia, and also the founding member of the Facebook group Sembang Science. Please join me in welcoming our next speaker of the day, Dr. Margaret.
Hi, hello everybody, good morning. Give me a minute for me to share my screen. All right, can I get a verbal confirmation if you could see my screen, please?
Yes, doctor, we can see your screen.
All right, so hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Alfred, for the kind introduction. I'm so excited to meet you guys back in USM, as what the initial videos were showing. I saw my face there back in 2018-19, if I'm not mistaken. So this will be my second time with the interaction with ACS USM. I would like to thank Dr. Huiling for always thinking about me and inviting me to come and speak to the USM students. Also, the amazing team of ACS USM. I was just telling Dr. Huiling yesterday on how good I feel that the committee has put this together, and especially Sok Ling has always been so attentive to my questions. I'm so sorry for bugging you with so many questions, but yet a real heads up, kudos to the group for putting this fantastic event together. And yes, I would like you to all relax, take a seat back, and I would really would like to share my opinions on the role of social media in science communication. But before we begin, I need all of you to do me a favor. Please take out your smartphones and scan the code and answer this question. Which social media platform do you frequent the most? Frequent here meaning you visit daily, you use, it could be a personal account, it could be a public account, any form of account. Just tell me which social media do you frequent the most. I'm going to give you another minute, and then we are going to watch we're going to see the scores. All right then. Okay, I can see from my screen that I have the highest number for Instagram, followed by Facebook and Twitter. Okay, this is very interesting. So you guys, sorry. Yes, okay. So you guys have told me that the most of you have frequently on Instagram, followed by Facebook and Twitter. That is very good. And just to share some statistics before we begin. All right, so when you say that most of you frequent Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, truth be told, you are part of the 3.96 billion users in the world as data of July 2020. So you could see that the last year, we are unfortunate to be in this weary state of pandemic, and a good news for social media platform users has increased tremendously over the past year. So this is data for the whole world, yeah? And this represents data of not only Facebook, not only the fun social media, it also includes Google+, it also includes LinkedIn. But what about data for fun social media sites? So fun social media sites, I would put it as Facebook, as Twitter, as Instagram. How about narrowing it down to Southeast Asian profiles? So what you would see here is, as per July 2020, we have 426 million users in Asia alone. And these are all Facebook users. And the Asia Pacific region accounts for 52.2% of global social media users. So you can see now that how big of your contribution has made to global social media users alone in the world. But now, you see, we have all these numbers, we have the sites, we have the social media sites, we have the numbers, we have people using social media sites every day. You have people taking out their phones, scrolling, using, having attention. So now you have this big group of people on a social media sites. And on the other hand, you have people like us, scientists. I like to call all of you scientists because all of you are doing, excuse me, all of you are in sciences. And from the earlier data I got from your committee, I do understand that a majority of you are doing your undergraduates. You do have some of you in postgraduate studies. And so what you would see right now is all of you are studying science in order for you to become scientists, yeah? So you have this group of people here who are using social media, and you have another group of people here, people like you guys with so much of scientific knowledge in hand. So how are you going to use this scientific knowledge and penetrate this group of people who are on social media, yeah? So I like this picture here that actually shows you this man here who is communicating a very complex modern theory physics. It's a modern physics theory, sorry, to a dog. And that doggy is thinking, I don't get you. All I know is I want cheese and I like cheese. So this is not a two-way communication. A two-way communication is when you say something and then the other party understands and the other party comprehends what you're saying. So what do we have at the advantage here is now, I like to say this a lot, that we do study so much. Undergraduate is such a tough process and you have so much to study. You have so many subjects. You go to class every day, you do your lab reports, your assignment, your tutorial, and then all that is just stored in your brain and in your classroom. How about using what you study, what you know, and disseminating it to the public? Because you do have a big group of people, a big pool of people on your social media platforms. So I would like to draw your attention here to these posters here. So you have a few TV shows, which I'm sure all of you are so familiar with. You have Bill Nye, your science guy. You have another show called The Big Bang Theory, which is very famous, personally my favorite. You also have Mythbusters here. So what this show, why are these shows so engaging? I could vouch for Big Bang Theory because I'm a diehard fan of Big Bang Theory. What these shows have in common is through comedy, they incorporate and they include science. So especially during Big Bang Theory, if I don't understand something Sheldon Cooper is saying, what I would do is I would pick up my phone and I would try to Google it. In this small process, what happens is a form of science communication where the show is trying to penetrate the millions of people who are viewing the show and try to subtly, I would say subtly incorporate science facts into shows to a larger audience. So the same goes to social media. You have the audience, you have the platform. All you need to do now is put yourself into these platforms and disseminate your science. Sounds very difficult, sounds boring, but I would like to share a personal experience on how I managed to penetrate that and managed to share some of my own scientific research and some of my own point of view through a larger audience through social media. If you ask me a single way for me to advise you on how do you do that, I would say the answer would depend on you, because there is no one single foolproof method that is going to work for everyone. So basically what worked for me may or may not work for you. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you several examples and you could see which one suits you best. So another piece of data, if you look at this chart on your left, you would see that Malaysia is one of the highest consumers of social media with the highest time spent on social media per day. So you would see here that Malaysians spend an average of 3.25 hours on social media sites. So this could include Instagram, as what you guys all do, Twitter and Facebook. Yeah. So now you know you have the billion of users. You have people scrolling their phones, scrolling on sites, and you know that at least in a day, you have 3 hours of their attention. So what I would see that is as an opportunity to spread science and as an opportunity to talk about what is probably your FYP or probably what you have studied that day. All right, so what you can do is, how do you start? I have simply put a picture here. This is a very simplified version on what actually happens, but I hope you can just take some points here and there, and then we will go through on later on how I would show you some real life examples on what goes on in my own group, yeah? So first, choose from a variety of platforms. You have so many platforms. I would prefer to suggest all of you to use platforms that are visited or platforms that are subscribed by most Malaysians, which are Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. These are factually one of the highest usage in, at least in the Southeast Asian regions. So among this platform, choose one that is most familiar to you. The second would be to establish a social strategy. All right, I do get this question many times that I have a Facebook page and I like to post about movie stars, I like to post about songstress, I like to post facts, I don't like to post facts, I like to post recipes, I like to post cookbook recipes, and I like to only share them with my close friends. I do not want to accept friends or followers who are not people that I personally know. How do I separate both if I want to have a larger audience who's going to follow me just on a science-based account? So some of my friends or some of my colleagues do have this strategy that they have two Facebook accounts. The first one being a personal account where you share your own pictures, your family pictures, anything, your recipes, your favorite songs, your favorite Hollywood gossip. The other one would be to set a more a public account. That would mean people could follow you and you strictly use it only for science. Yeah. So that is your own prerogative. That would be your own strategy on what you would like to have. Would you want to have two separate accounts or just one account that covers all? Yeah. The other one is, for example, on Facebook, you can either choose to have a group or a page. So a group on Facebook is different to a page. It has different, I would say, rules and regulations, and it allows you to do different things. Yeah, a group and a page allow you to have to do different things on Facebook. The second is to establish a personal branding. I would say this is to address your own flavor. In my own group, personally, I'm not a very serious person. Even during my classes, I like to incorporate a lot of humor, like what Dr. Yvonne mentioned just now. I love the idea on using Legos that you also incorporate a lot of wit into your classroom, a lot of jokes and everything. So I know that that's my flavor. I cannot write something in a very technical manner. I cannot write something that it's going to be serious. So what my group is it's technically a combination of a lot of different jokes, different things that I find very relatable and very current. So establish your personal branding is to always go back to how your tone of yourself is. Yeah. The other thing is to also understand how much of time can you spend and how much of time can you dedicate on social media presence. So I do understand that most of you are undergraduate students, meaning your free times are only after class hours. I would assume this could be after 5 or 6, probably at night, probably on the weekends. So in each week, you could tell yourself that I'm going to spend an hour or two just to post scientific related matters or postings or writings. So establish how much time you would want to spend on this writing. Another thing is to establish what kind of content you would like to put. If you go on social media, especially on Facebook, I would show you some examples later on, but you would realize that certain group and certain pages have their own flavor of content. Some groups only cater to writing in a certain language. Some groups only cater to certain people of a certain academic level. Some groups only cater to content which is inclusive to certain part of genre, like probably food or probably technology. Yeah. So you have to establish what kind of content are you going to put out on social media. Right. So as I said earlier just now, how do we get started? How are you? Probably one question that you're going to ask me is, what am I going to write about? I'm just a student studying Bachelor of Chemistry, for example. I go to class, I come back from class, I do my work, and that's it. I don't have anything. I don't have an interesting story to write. I don't have anything to say. I do just know what my lecturer teaches me in classes, and that is about it. So how am I going to get ideas to put things out on Facebook, yeah, or put things out on Instagram, or put things out on Twitter, yeah? So as I said earlier, my one biggest tip is I always have this writer's block as well. But I would tell you a secret on what I think that works best for me. So what I would do is I would always look around me and I would look at something and I would stare at it. Like right now, I do have this small thing of this flower thing on my table, on my desk. And what is going to intrigue me is, what is this made of? What is this made of? Is this some kind of, for example, it could be some kind of polymer. It could be wood. It could be steel. It could be anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to research on this. I'm going to start typing out things and I'm going to start finding that information and I'm going to make it into a story. So how am I going to start my story is while sitting down on my table on a crisp Sunday morning, sipping my coffee, this particular thing caught my eye. And this that blah, blah, blah is made of a polymer of blah, blah, blah. So what I'm trying to say is look at your surroundings and then try to get inspiration from what you see. Yeah. The idea is always to start somewhere. Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, this is some of the groups. There are so many others. I'm not being biased to choose this. The reason I chose this is that these are run by people that I personally know. Hence, it's easier to get their permission to share this. But there's so many other groups on Facebook, so many people doing very good work out there. The first picture here, Ini Science Babe, is a page on Facebook, amazing page. I suggest you to follow all of this, in fact, and go and see what kind of posts they have and go and have fun reading them. Yeah, this particular one at the bottom is a group. This group is only accepts posts in Bahasa Malaysia, and they cater towards a very narrow niche, which is on food and anything related to food intake or health. This is a very amazing group as well. And this is my personal group, which I run with another 4 of my colleagues, called Sembang Science. Basically, this is a group on Facebook. In order for you to follow this groups, whatever here, you could just type it into your search button, your tab button on Facebook, and then you'll be prompted on this. And then you could, for the page, you could click like, and then you would get updates on it. For a group, you would have to click join. And then depends on the rules and administrative policies of that group, you'd be admitted by one of the administrators, yeah? But this is a public group, so admitting into the group would just probably take a second or two. So in my group, we run in English and Bahasa Malaysia, hence the word Sembang, which to people who are not of Malaysian background, Sembang means to chat ideally. It's a loose form of chat, I would say. So that is Sembang. And science, if you notice, there's an English and a Malay word. So Sembang is Malay and science means, science is science in English. So it also means that we accept posts in English and we get posts in Bahasa as well. We share about anything. The reason I always use we and share and us, it's because we do accept posts from anyone. So after this, at the end of my talk, and after you have seen the examples and how to efficiently write a post on Facebook or on any social media sites, I would definitely love to get any posts from all of you. And this could be shared on any of the groups whichever you are keen on. And if you would like to get in touch with one of us in the group, you could always send in your post to the group, and then we could put it out for public. Okay. So I'm just going to run through some examples on how I see post to be interesting and engaging. And I also will show you the post and how much post reach we get. So you could be the judge on which kind of post you think is more appealing to each of you. Yeah. So the first one is by one of my colleagues. As I said, there's 4 of us running this group. So is one of my colleagues. And funny story is because she was having cereal with her son one day, and her son picked up this nut, and the son went to her and went like, "Mommy, what is this brown looking thing? It has edges which are wiggly, and I don't like it." And he spat it out and put it on the table. So she picked it up and she told, and then went on to explain to her son that this is a walnut, and it actually has a lot of benefits, and you should eat it. And then she had an idea on what if I put that into writing. And then she wrote a very simple post in Bahasa Malaysia, and she explained the benefits of walnut. So she made this very simple post, I would say, through a lot of free softwares. I wouldn't want to name any softwares online, but you could Google free software to generate infographics or free software to generate posters on any search browser, and you would get a lot of softwares that would aid you to create diagrams like this. If you think this takes up a lot of time, you could take a witty picture of me squishing ferns here. So this was a picture of me when I went to visit Belum Rainforest Resort. And this was the first time I was exposed to this particular fern called Pucuk Paku in Bahasa Malaysia. I was very amazed that the boatman who took us on a tour went on picking this pucuk paku from the sides of the riverbank, and then he delighted us into a stir fry later that night for dinner. And then I found out, and it made me curious on why are people eating ferns by the side of the riverbank? And goodness, why are they so tasty? Because he made a simple stir fry with belacan and garlic, and it was so tasty. So what I did, because it was my first time, I went on and Googled it, and I wrote about it. And then I decided to put a picture of me smiling with my eyes almost closed. As you can see, you cannot see my eyes anymore here because I was that delighted, as you could find in this picture here. And I wrote a post on how I was excited about finding this vegetable, how delicious the stir fry was, and truth be told, it has 6.7K reach. So this is 6,700 post reach. Yeah. So this is not what I am proud of. I'm not proud to say that, oh, this has so many post reach and everything. In fact, I feel so humbled that actually 6,700 people actually found out something new that day. So when we put things out, you should have a feeling of genuinity, of genuinely wanting to share this knowledge to people outside. So when I saw that it had so many shares and comments, I got people coming up and writing, and it's like, oh, you should try making this dish. Or some other person said that, oh, I didn't realize that a humble leaf like the pucuk paku, which is next to a sungai in any part of the world, that has so many nutrients. Yeah. So this is actually how you personalize your post. You make it relatable by putting a picture, by telling a story, like what I mentioned about my friend's son who spat out this odd looking nut. And then you insert a witty picture. If English or Bahasa Malaysia, you're not comfortable writing in Bahasa Malaysia English, I have friends overseas who write in Spanish, who write in Latin. You could write in Mandarin, you could write in Tamil, or you could write in whatever your native language is. If that is your target audience, if your followers, people on Facebook, on your personal account, are people more of a Mandarin speaking background, then lo and behold, you could write a post in Mandarin. The second post was my favorite food here, which is tempeh. I love tempeh, especially when you fry it or you cook it with sambal belacan or anything not. So I decided to, why not write about the nutritional facts of tempeh. I also wrote about how do we cook vegetables which are water soluble, which have vitamins which are water soluble, which have vitamins which are fat soluble. All right, how do you make sure what you're writing is authentic? How do you make sure what you're writing is true? Because in this day and age, we are so often bombarded with pseudoscience. So pseudoscience is pseudo, which is not true, fake, false, and then you have science. So what you have is science which is not true, science which is fake, science which is manipulated to sound true. So what you do when you always write a post is always have a point of reference. My point of reference is always journal articles. When speaking about journal articles, please bear in mind that there are so many predatory journals out there that claim to have a certain quartile value, but the actual fact is they're not actually registered, they're not actually validated under WOS, Web of Science, or ISI. So my advice would be to look for validated journals in a proper quartile listing under good search browsers. So good search browsers, I'm sure you would have learned that in your particular university on what would be the best browser for you to use. Yeah. So check validity of facts, use authentic reference. If all fails, go back to your good old textbook, open your textbook like what I used to do when I was back in studying in my days. We did not use much of virtual platform or these online tools as much as you guys are doing now. So I would always prefer to go back to my textbook, open the chapter on makanan and nutricy and go and check what is what. So if all fails, go back to your good old textbooks. All right. These are some more examples of what you can write. So I'm here telling you that you can write about almost anything. Science communication simply means to communicate science. As as what Dr. Yvonne has eloquently mentioned just now, what you have to do is just use your signs, whatever signs you have right now, and communicate it. I am just telling you a means of communicating it through social media, because as what we have seen in the first slide just now, we saw a large group of people who are actively scrolling their phones, especially now during this pandemic time. So one of the examples of what you can write would be a trip. So my friends and I actually went to Tanjung Tualang in Perak, where we actually went to see a tin dredge. So this is kapal korek in Bahasa Malaysia, and we were so amazed on the how big the ship looks and how magnificent the view was. So we decided to do a little history digging about it. We went into Arkib Negara's website and we went to check the history of Perak on when this tin dredge came along to Perak. So we wrote a little story about us going to this tin dredge. We attached some pictures that we took in the ship, and then we also explained what is the components of this ship made of. Yeah. So another one would be to reach out to your friends. Should you have a page or a group, it is always good to remember that you don't stand alone. Man is never made alone. We are made as a group of people, an island, to interact with one another. So I would always like to reach out to my friends. And I have a very dear friend of mine who loves botany, who loves to plant her own vegetables. So she made a video. She has a PhD in botany. So what she did was she made a video on her trimming and stemming her plants and menting for her plants. And she told us about how easy was it to grow long beans, kacang panjang. So I incorporated that into my group, and it had so many reach with so many people learning so many new things. So again, what I'm trying to say here is you can use everyday stories. You can reach out to your friends who do very, very cool stuff, and you can even write about your trips, about you going to the market, for example, you going to a tin dredge, for example. Yeah. Another thing when you run a page or a group is always to create some form of engagement. If you don't create engagement, your group and post would be a one-way direction, meaning that you'll be posting things on your page and you'll be not getting the feedback or the interaction that is required. Yeah. So what I often get in my page or my group would be questions like this. And then what I would do is, me or my teammates, we answer those questions and link the question to another question. For example, this is body care expired deodorant, is it safe to use? This post alone reached 972 hits, and we received 10 comments for this post. In these comments, we did see people asking another question on top of a question. What I mean is, so I would start by answering the question. One of my friend who is a chemist answered that question from a chemistry point of view. My background is not chemistry, so I refrain from answering a chemistry-based question. So my friend who is a registered chemist answered this question. And what we did was we went on asking another question saying that, how about the expiry date number on your deodorant? What does that mean? And do you even know that sometimes on your makeup product, you have a little circle that says 12M or 13M. Next time after this, all you ladies, please go back to your makeup products and look at the validity of your makeup products. You have a small circle there which states how many days or how many months can you use the makeup product for. Yeah, and then we would also do engagement by asking questions like this. Ramai yang suka menggunakan perkataan organik, and is bahan kimia really free from organic materials? What is your thoughts? What is your pendapat? What is your pendapat? So we had a lot of people answering questions like this. So these are a form of examples on how you create engagements to a post. Another one interesting fact and an interesting statistic I would like to share is these are the best times to post on Facebook. Statistics say that the best time for you to post to increase public engagement is our Wednesdays, 11 a.m. and 1 to 2 p.m. Wednesdays are typically, I wouldn't say it's on a fun value. It's always called the hump day because it's in between the whole week. So it's when it's during the time of the week that people want to chill, want to relax a little bit. So according to statistics, this is the best time for you to post on Facebook. The best day again would be Wednesday, and the worst day would be Sunday. I wouldn't know for a fact why, but why I'm guessing is because Sunday is always the end of the week, and then you're feeling so blah to move on to Monday blues. So I guess that is where people are so busy prepping themselves for the start of the week. For those who have families, they will be prepping their kids and their families and their school bags and their meals and everything. So the worst day to post would be on Sundays. All right. I noticed just now on the poll that not many of you have Twitter profiles, or not many of you are do frequent Twitter. But here I would like to share a little bit of my personal experience on how I set up my Twitter profile and how I have found Twitter so beneficial. So to start, Twitter to me is a microblogging platform. I do realize that Twitter comes with a very short word count, 140 characters. So you have a very minimum character to type and a very minimum things for you to shorten in order for you to make your speech or whatever you want to say. It is quite tricky, can be a little bit difficult for beginners, but again, I would really recommend all of you to start off a Twitter account. This is because, personal story, I managed to get some of my students very good postdoc or postgraduate placements in larger universities all around the world. Other than Asia, other parts of the world are very active on Twitter. And a lot of big universities outside, even in Malaysia, even in Asia, tweet out positions for research positions, especially for PhD and master's positions. And this would be a very good way for you to engage a scientific community using a Twitter platform. So for me personally, I have a personal Facebook account, which I use it for personal purposes. I also, with my friends, run a group, which is a public group. So that is where I come in with science communication. And I also have a Twitter account, which I use for scientific engagement. Yeah, so if you would just kindly follow me, I would definitely love to show you how to start up a Twitter profile. It can be a little bit demotivating at first. I remember my first Twitter profile, I had 2 followers, and both of them was because I forced my friends to follow me. It's because when I started them, nobody wanted to follow me. So I told my friends, please follow me or else I will look silly because I have 0 followers. And then after a while, it picked up because I learned on how am I supposed to create engagement. I learned how am I supposed to increase my viewers, yeah? So this is something, this is just my opinion. There may be so many other magnificent Twitter profiles around, but this is what I learned from my program with the Science Spider Future Leader program in 2017, where I was exposed to setting up profiles like this, yeah? So the first would be to put in your full name and to also put a picture. If you're not going to put a picture, it wouldn't be good for scientific engagement, yeah? If you're going to put a picture of a cartoon and everything, I would suggest to keep it then as not a profile for scientific engagement. It is good to put a picture. The aura of your picture could be different. Some people like to put professional shots. That is good. I always like to include semi-formal shots to show my viewers that the aura of my profile is semi-formal, yeah? So I put in a picture, my full name, yeah, put in your full name. Also, this is called a Twitter handler. Add your name. Sometimes Twitter handlers can already be taken, especially if you have a very common name, yeah? My name, if you notice, is super uncommon because my name does not have a R. So I go by MAGA. So my handler was very easy to find because my name does not have a R as how you would typically spell Margaret. So this was my Twitter handler. If your name is very common, try to find something that has a majority of your name, your words, the words of the Twitter handler has majority of the words that are in your real name. Yeah. Or you can put in a number at the side. If your name is, for example, Muhammad Ali, that is a very common name. So you could put Muhammad Ali 51 or Muhammad Ali 23 or something. You get what I mean by using your full name and putting something else at the side there. And then include, if it's for a scientific engagement purpose, include your affiliation. So this is where I teach. I'm an educator at the university. I'm also an affiliate member of the Academy Science Malaysia Young Scientist Network. I also include hashtags, which I want people to reach out to me by and know me by. I have @ so @ means that you belong, I would say belong, or you are at a certain institution, means you are related to a certain institution. So, and then I also add, I also have an Elias Science Finder, a future leader, and then include hashtags which you want the world to know you by. So I also put women in STEM, and I also put this hashtag because apart from talking about science engagements or science related topic, I also talk about positive body image, and I also talk about subjects which are taboo. So I put this hashtag here. If you would want to know more about this, please feel free to reach out to me. I could definitely explain to you why is this hashtag here. And I also put hashtag science communication and my pronouns. One small tip, when you are setting up profiles like this on Twitter, or when you are hashtagging anything, always put the first word of it capital. Because on hits, when you put something as this, like future leader, all small, your algorithm is going to pick this up as one word. Yeah, so your hits would be only for this one word. But if you're going to capitalize each word, you're going to get for hits for women, and you're also going to get hits for STEM. So everybody who finds this hashtag would be related back to your account. That is why people put hashtags, for you to belong to a larger community, the larger Twitter community. Yeah. So always remember, when you want to put a hashtag, always capitalize your first letter of the word. Like here, scientists can wear makeup. Science as can wear makeup. Yeah, always capitalize the first word of that hashtag. Yeah. How I use Twitter for scientific engagements are this. Examples on the screen here. Every year, RSC, the Royal Society of Chemistry, have a Twitter competition for posters. So they have a conference that runs specifically on Twitter just for you to tweet out your posters. So this is a conference. It's a very interesting concept. It is a conference, but it runs on Twitter. So what you do is you need to learn how to use a sentence, how to construct a sentence, using hashtags. So my research primarily deals on the ecotoxicity of ionic liquids. So are hashtag ionic liquids really green? This hashtag RSC poster, because this was the name of the conference. It's a Twitter conference run by RSC. So this was what they asked us to put out, like what I have seen in this call for this event. You have included some hashtags. So if someone asks you to include the hashtags for following purposes, you could always also include that in your any form of engagement, and then you put in your poster. So what actually happens is, a very interesting story happened here was when people who were searching for hashtags ionic liquids, all of them got brought to my poster, because when you search hashtag ionic liquids on Twitter, you would probably get 1 million hits. And in this 1 million hits, it'll be categorized into recent hits. So people who have been posting or have been tweeting on that particular minute or hour or so would be listed on top. And then you could go and look for who are the other people who are hashtagging ionic liquids during this Twitter conference event. who are the other people hashtagging about drug solubility, for example? Who are the other people hashtagging about desulfurization? What actually happens is, and then you could private message them. And we had many form of very long engagements, very long discussions of people sharing articles or people even asking questions like, hey, I grown this on my broth and I put it for 24 hours, but this isn't seem to be growing. Can you help me? And then someone came and said that, oh, you have to add 2 milligrams of NaCl into it for it to grow. So not only did I manage to share my research, I also managed to get some tips on why some of my experiments were not working in the lab. So if you see, one thing led to the other, and then now they are my friends, they are colleagues, they're people that I have connections with, yeah? So you may never know what would you get if you don't start. So this is another friend of mine who was also tweeting it and also going through that Twitter poster conference. All right. This is another very nice example by our first speaker just now, Dr. Yvonne Chu, who incorporated very, very nice and very, very highly shared infographic of the chemistry of nasi lemak for the previous, our National Day celebration on the 31st of August last year. So what Dr. Yvonne Chu did was, I then learned from her that this was the inspiration that she got during when she was at home, and she got a eureka moment and decided to do this poster. But what further represents us than nasi lemak? What brings all races together at shops, at mama shops, at your gerai or your house, rather than this humble plate of nasi lemak? So you see how this post was so relatable. At the same time, it was so informative, because what she did was she explained what is the chemical of ginger, what is the chemical compositions, or what is the contributing flavor of ginger, what are the contributing flavors of santan. And then she even put in a really, really cute picture here. So, and then she hashtags Merdeka Day. She hashtags the chemistry of nasi lemak. And she writes a very, very cute message here, which was shared many, many times. So what actually, what I'm trying to say here is, you don't only need to use Twitter for very serious and boring things, but this is how you can incorporate some fun, some humor, some eureka moments you have at home, some inspirations that you get looking outside the window, you know. So this can be done. Maybe you could ask her on how she, later on, you could ask her, how did she draw this, using what software she could use? I always like to ask this kind of questions because I'm always in search for good softwares to do infographics in order to make good posters. So if you have an opportunity, kindly ask her on how did she create this, you know? And also another one thing I would like to do is to highlight here on how you celebrate your own victories. So this is something that I put out on October 15, 2020 last year, on how I chose to celebrate myself, because I was very happy to be inducted an affiliate member of the Young Scientist Network Academy Science Malaysia. And what I did was I tagged a YSN to tell them that I'm grateful, that I'm happy, that I am very proud to be associated. And I also aliased my academic institution that I'm attached to. And this is how you celebrate your own academic achievements. It also goes the same for if you published a new paper. If you want to say something out in public like that, go ahead and kindly do that. And also include the tag of your new paper that you published. So this, like Facebook, this is something that Twitter, the best time to post on Twitter, it is said statistically on a reputable website, on the best days to engage on Twitter would be on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. The worst days are Saturdays, and the best times are 9 a.m. on Wednesday and Friday, 9 a.m. So you could see a similarity here that social media tends to thrive on Wednesdays, yeah? So maybe you could plan if you'd want to write a post, even on your personal Facebook page, on something, probably your FYP. What is your FYP about? What are you doing in your FYP? Maybe you can put that started my first day at the lab, working with bacteria, blah, blah, blah. Bacteria, blah, 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 is actually and post it on a Wednesday, and then see how you can create engagement through that one post. All right. Another question that I always get from my friends or students or anybody who has a conversation with me is these fears that they have on even thinking of starting or putting out anything on social media. So the four biggest common fears are fears of being wrong. What if I'm ignored? Like what I said, I had 2 followers on my Twitter the first day I started. What if I'm being yelled at? What if people don't like what I'm putting out? What if people mock me? What if people say mean things? And am I allowed to say things like this? Is my research under some ethical clause that I'm not supposed to reveal some information on social media or any other platform? So you might be very happy to hear that these fears are not only faced by us common people. In fact, in 2013, there was an article written by Goldstein and colleagues that the title of the article was Introduction to Social Media for Scientists. So what they did was they gathered a large group of scientists, and these people not only included adults, but it also included young adults like all of you, and it cumulatively expressed what are the common fears of people that stops them from putting things out on social media. And you might be happy to hear that all of these people feel the same way like us. So it's just not only us that feel this way of being judged. In fact, it's everybody else who feels this way. And they also make this chart so simply by, I was actually very amused by when I was reading it, that if you're wrong, it's okay. It's just like making a mistake, make a correction. If you're ignored, it's okay because you're a part of a thriving online community. If your institutional rules don't allow you to, check your institutional rules before that. Check your grant rules before that, because I have worked in a project previously that did not allow us to communicate any form of results, or even did not even allow us to even narrate what is the gist of our project before. So talk to them, ask them, how could you work your way around this? Yeah, because you wouldn't want to be sued by these big institutions for breaching or infringing this kind of regulations. All right. So with that, these are my take-home messages. I would like to challenge all of you that please write something regarding your research, or if you're in your final year, your project, like what I mentioned just now. Today I walked into the lab and I am working on bacteria, blah, 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 and this is what bacteria, blah, blah, blah has happened. Or if you're not at that stage of your FYP yet, talk about what you learn in class. So what I do with my class is, in my classrooms, what I do is every day I give them a challenge. So last week's class, I was teaching them about pesticides and how pesticides have a very negative implication towards groundwater or even to the ecological biota around us. So I taught them how to read an MSDS. And their challenge was to interpret their MSDS to their parents, because all of them had parents who had little gardens in their house where their parents were spraying pesticide, insecticide, herbicide, and whatnots. So I told them to go back, talk to their parents or their guardians or their caretakers or anybody else in their house around them, and tell them what is the implications of not wearing your gloves, not wearing your PPE. So that particular class challenge was to explain to their parents the ecological data, your LC50, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but the LC50 and the EC50 on the toxicity amount of that pesticide. And I told them to explain that to their parents, and they were going to record the session, and we are going to discuss it in the next class later on. So it's just small things like this, how you can use what you studied in your class. If it's something that has intrigued you or something that has made you go, wow, probably so one of your lecturers had taught you something that day that you were so amazed by, write about it. Talk about, today I learned this in class today, and my lecturer had mentioned that this. In fact, this is the blah, 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 blah. What Dr. Yvonne mentioned just now, very interesting on how she relates catabolism and anabolism to things like that. So write in your post that catabolism is actually a cat scratching tissue. So make it a post and put it on Wednesday on your social media platform and see how does that create engagement, yeah? It's okay if no one likes it. As what I say, I don't think you can get any worse than me having 2 followers on day 1 of having my Twitter account. It's okay if nobody likes it. put it on there over time, keep on sharing it, keep on writing comments about it. After some time, I guarantee you people are going to look at it and want to read it. Yeah, even on my personal, the public group on Facebook, Sembang Science, that I showed you just now, we had very little followers initially. And then now later we have thousands of followers who are very engaging, who often ask us a lot of questions sometimes, and we use that questions and write posts back on the group. Yeah. And remember, you're not in competition with anyone. There are so many other groups on pages on Facebook that have millions of followers or thousands of followers. It's okay. What are we all doing is we all are contributing to the idea of wanting the general public to be more in love with science. You're not in competition with anybody. In fact, you're all working together as like you, young people, young scientists, you're working together to educate, to share your love of science to everyone. So the competition is actually within yourselves. It's not with anybody else. It doesn't matter. You put a post and your friend has 1,000 likes and I only get 1 like. It's okay. If you manage to make change the life or probably put interest in one person who has read that post and thought of that, oh, I never looked at catabolism and anabolism in that manner. Thanks for sharing. You made an impact and interest in one person, and that is actually already changing the life of one person. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and to follow us and the other magnificent groups we have on Facebook just now. And yes, I'll be very happy to take on questions later on during the sessions, or you have anything, you can reach out to me on my group, or you can even reach out to me on my Twitter account, and I'll be more than happy to take your questions. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Dr. Margaret, for this interesting and beneficial sharing with us. I am sure participants have learned on how to well utilize social media as a medium for science communication. We will go to our next session, which is our forum session. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will proceed to the forum session with a theme when art meets science, the journey of two science communicators, by welcoming again our brilliant speakers, Dr. Margaret and Dr. Yvonne Chu, and also our beloved moderators for today, Ms. Shirley Uy and Ms. Catherine Lim. Let's welcome them.
Good morning again, everybody. I bet everyone had a very refreshing and interesting morning listening to the talks given by Dr. Margaret and Dr. Yvonne. Now, we would like to extend your horizons again by beginning our forum titled, When Art Meets Science, the Journey of Two Science Communicators. All right, my name is Shirley Uy, and I'm a final year student majoring in pure chemistry and minoring in graphic communication. And I'm also an ACS student member and the former president of ACS USM. And I would be your moderator for this session.
Okay, I'm Catherine Lim, a third-year student majoring in pure chemistry and minoring in computer science. I'm also an ACS student member and the current vice president of ACS USM. I will be the moderator for today. Before
we begin our forum, let us meet our panels again. Here we have Dr. Margaret and Dr. Yvonne again with us as the panels of this forum.
As you have met or seen previously, Dr. Margaret is a lecturer in Quest International University, Perak, who had just given a talk on the role of social media in science communication. Besides, Dr. Yvonne, a lecturer from Xiamen University, Malaysia, had also given a talk moments ago on the role of physical communication.
We welcome any questions from the audience. You may send your questions in the chat room or unmute yourself during the Q&A session to ask them. But we hope that all of you keep your questions related to science communication as today's topic. Thank you very much. Okay, for the first question, we want to ask both our panels, what inspired you to start out in science communication? Dr. Margaret and Dr. Yvonne.
Oh, okay. Should I go first, Yvonne?
Anything.
All right, okay. So thank you, moderators. So what actually inspired me was because prior to 2017, so before I had been awarded the Science Finder Future Leader Award in 2017. So that is when we actually went to the US for a couple of weeks to undergo a program with them, with the American Chemical Society in the US. I have not heard of the term science communication at all. I did not even know what it was. I didn't know I was subtly doing it because I've always liked writing in science and writing. So it was till up to 2017 that I went to the US and then learned about what is science communication and actually had a small training on it. So I would say what inspired me was the trip to the US and being awarded. Actually, the trip wouldn't have happened if I hadn't got the Future Leader Award in 2017. So yeah, that would be my response to this question.
For my case, I think the thing that inspired me was periodic table of videos. I'm not sure how many of you actually watched that video by Sir Martin Polyakov, the scientist with like a very stereotypical Albert Einstein head. Well, it started off there, and that was where I saw videos of a world without pollen, like the International Year of Chemistry 2011. So that was like 10 years back. So because of that curiosity that I had, because that logo appeared in one of the videos that they were showing, I Googled it and participated in a competition called A World Without Polymers. So I submitted my video entry and miraculously I won first place. I went to the US and everything just went on from there. I started getting invitations from Institute Kimia Malaysia for being a speaker when I was in USM. I get invited to speak at events for 3 consecutive Carnival Kimia Malaysia. And then when I went to the UK for my PhD studies, I actually stepped out of my comfort zone and went to my first science communication event, which is the Story Center for 7 Stories, the Center for Children's Book, the one that I showed about my journey. That was my very first science communication thing in the UK. And everything else from there built on from that excitement and that fun I had through that session. So I think what inspired me was the periodic table of videos. And because of that video, it actually builds up to where I am now, 10 years later in 2021, speaking to you guys.
Right, that's very interesting. I hope that both doctors can become inspirations to all of our almost 500 participants listening in to join into science communication. Catherine, you have any questions?
Yeah, okay. For the next question for both speakers are, what are the greatest challenges you face as a science communicator and how did you overcome them?
I think, should I go first, Dr. Margaret?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so I think if you look back at my slide, right, I didn't mention about soapbox science, standing on the streets of Newcastle on a soapbox trying to explain science to people. I think that to me was the greatest challenge because you don't know who your audiences are, that's for sure. You don't know who would pass by your soapbox, you don't know who would stop, you don't know what their background is. It's kind of like you're thrown into a mock test without knowing what the test is. So all you have to do then, like what I did then, was to try and tackle kids, like I've mentioned, and hopefully that would bring a set target audience, which are parents, perhaps some adults that are interested. But there is one instance where because I was talking about polymers, I was talking about plastics, things like that, and there were contradicting response from the audience that were listening. So there were people that were people that hates plastic, people that is very much against plastic, and anything to do with plastic, like research into plastic, would be bad for them. So when they came to my booth, they had the shut door, like closed mind, and they had the intention to kind of tell me that I'm doing a bad thing with my research. So at that point of time, it was very difficult, but I chose to just switch off my speaking mode and turn on my listening mode. So I listened to what that person has to say about why he or she hates plastic, why is it impacting the environment? And then I found some point where I can kick in and say, oh, okay, do you know about biodegradable plastics? Do you know about this kind of plastics? These are plastics that scientists are trying to do research on and trying to change what you're thinking. So instead of going against that person, you need to find a point where you can twist that person's, I would say, thoughts and words and make it into an advantage for you. Back to my take-home message: make all challenges an opportunity. So that's the challenge that I had during that Soapbox Science event. Yeah, Dr.
Yeah. For me, I've always known that using social media was my thing. Like that's how I would see best to use my writing in order to push social media through science communication through social media. So one of my biggest challenge, I would say, in the beginning stages was getting followers, because it's always like a big hype to set up a profile. Like what I mentioned just now, I set up a Twitter profile and I only had 2 followers, and I was very, very, very bummed out because I was thinking I have so much to say, so much to do, so much to write. Why isn't anyone wanting to even listen to me? Or why isn't anyone following me when I have followed so many of them? So my followers would be 2 and I would be following hundreds of people. So I was very upset about that and I was very demotivated. In fact, I wanted to deactivate the whole Twitter thing. But then what actually, I liked what Dr. Yvonne mentioned about how challenges fuels you to even make more opportunities. So what I did was I went on to see what I was doing wrong. Maybe I am not following the correct people. Maybe I am not posting up the right stuff. So I went to do some research about it. I reached out to a lot of people to ask for help, to ask for advice. And lo and behold, it went on really well after that. Another challenge I would deem to be very pertinent was criticism. So especially when you are having a big group like this on Facebook, I had many friends who had come up to me and say that, how could you put something so important like, for example, the removal of blah, blah, blah from crude oil, or for example, how could you just make something so important to the science world? And how could you make that into a story? Like, what are you doing? You're crushing science. The correct word, even the exact word that some of them used were, you're crushing science. You're taking out the science out of science, you know? So one big challenge was to deal with that, to explain, like what Yvonne mentioned just now, to use, to listen. To listen, that's very important, to listen what they have got to say and see how that can fuel around what you are trying to write later on, you know? So yes, that's my answer for the biggest challenges.
Thanks, Dr. Yvonne and Dr. Margaret, for sharing your experience.
Yeah, I feel like I really agree, because there are some instances where, sorry, my connection is a little unstable. There are some instances where they are anti-vax and they tell a lot of people about not like how vaccine is terrible for us, but I agree with how Dr. Yvonne handled the situation, and that sounds very professional. The next question we have here, we're going to make this fast because we are short on time. The next question is that, is the slide going to change? So link is a slide. It's okay. The next question would be, science communication is a quite foreign practice to most people in Malaysia. Well, do you think it's any different from conventional teaching? Do you think we can incorporate science communication into normal teaching in primary, secondary, or tertiary levels education in Malaysia?
All right. I think that to science communication, there are so many aspects of it. There's the oral aspect of it, there's a non-oral aspect of it, and there's a visual aspect of it. For me, I like to simplify it by just breaking it down to communicating in science. So I think in that sense, a lot of us as educators, as lecturers, are already doing that already. I mean, already doing that as we teach. So as we teach, we are already breaking very complicated theories down to a simplified manner to our students. So that's a form of already a very simple form of science communication there already. The idea of it is actually to get the general public to start talking about science. That is where the battle is being won. So I believe that what we are doing now has already been incorporated into our education system, but definitely more of it, more I would say more approaches to it, more different varieties of it, like probably getting your students to draw infographics or probably posting that infographics onto social media later on. So that'll be my opinion on the question.
Building on to that, I actually agree, and I would fully support science communication being being used in teaching. It's because, like I've mentioned in my talk just now, anabolism and catabolism, because I teach biochemistry currently in Sama University, Malaysia, to a group of chemical engineers, so degree undergraduate programs. They're actually more familiar with the chemistry side of things, right? So that's why using these kind of science communication methods in trying to make things easier to digest, trying to make things more relatable to them would help in their digestion and their learning experience, help enhance them. I actually use a lot of Legos in my teaching. In biochemistry, I teach fatty acid metabolism or the structure of monosaccharides, disaccharides, for example. Those I use Lego pieces to replace the usual chemistry structures that you see. I also incorporated, like Dr. Margaret has mentioned, infographics. I told my students to make infographics about the biochemistry around them. And the infographics are actually available online. I've placed them all online under my students' creations. So you can search for it using ycxmum.wordpress.com, and you will see a whole range of infographics that has been made by my students in supporting chemical, in supporting of having science communication in teaching. Yeah.
Some of our lecturers do that too for our assignments, and it's actually one of the most interesting assignments compared to the written ones, because when we do infographics, it's more about visuals. Well, I think the next question, Catherine.
Okay. Yeah, infographic is really interesting because as we all know that picture worth 1,000 words, right? Okay, for the next question is, how should we as students who had little to no background step into the science communication world? As we know that most students, especially from STEM, are more introverted and not as outspoken as those from art stream. So what is both speaker advice to those who would be facing difficulties in speaking to people about what we study?
I don't think personally you need to have a background in science communication in order for you to communicate science. Like what I mentioned just now, the simple assignment that I asked my students to do to explain to explain the MSDS or to explain the toxicity data of pesticide to their parents. And they were supposed to take a video of it and then discuss it in class later on. So I think it's just these small little things that you can do. You can start by even talking about your FYP project if you have one, or you can even talk about that particular class lessons that you went underwent that day. So you could talk about if you had like an interesting chemistry lesson or an interesting biology lesson, and you want to share that in your own. You could tell a story about it. You could even draw a picture about it. You could draw an infographic about it, and then you could share it on your social media. So if you're an introvert that you don't prefer to stand in the spotlight, or you don't prefer to engage much in verbal communication, I would highly recommend using your social media profiles. If you do not have something catered specifically for public purposes, maybe just share it on your own personal page and write up a post about your FYP, or write up a post about your interesting class lessons that day. Yeah, so over to you, Dr. Yvonne.
I agree. I totally concur what you said. And I think that not only do you need to pick a medium that best suits you, if you're not good with words, not good with spoken words, you prefer written words, then it's best for you to pick, like Dr. Margaret has mentioned, social media accounts, blogs, or even if you like to make videos, if making video is a thing that you like to do, then go ahead and make videos. It doesn't have to be just verbal communication in order for you to start. Baby steps at a time. Start small. It can be starting from don't know, talking to your teddy bear, talking to your pet, talking to your parents, and then start to grow from there. Maybe your niece and nephews or your younger cousins, they could be a good target audience for you to practice. And when you feel confident enough, then that's where you take a leap, take a step out of your comfort zone and take that chance, just like what I did when I was in the UK.
I always talk to my friends about what I study, especially some topics which are very interesting. And then I'll tell them a whole story about it. And then I feel bad. I'll say, sorry, I'm taking up your time. But it's very fun to tell them about what we learn. Do you have anything to add, Catherine?
Yeah, it's true. Like sharing with friends, like you can bring your own experience or something. Like during our communication, we can also add on something like we learn about it and then share something to other friends. It's good.
Okay, moving on. Our last question from the moderators before we move on to the questions from our audience is for both doctors. What do you think about science communication as a career, especially in Malaysia?
Currently, at the moment, I would say in Malaysia, it would be science communication jobs in science centers like PetroScience or National Science Center, or you can have science journalism job, writing for Scientific Malaysian, things like that. But I would say temporarily the choices for science communication as a career in Malaysia, it's still quite limited. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not too updated about this particular part, but I think that what we have outside, like for example in the UK or in the US, they actually have lots of jobs that are related. Like there are specific science communication roles tied to a university where the people, the role actually covers all sorts of creating all sorts of things, including organizing of events that relates to science communication that represents that university. They also help researchers in that university talk about their science to a wider audience. So science communicators that are based in university would help enhance researchers' experience in kind of communicating, whereas science communicating jobs that are based in the science center are mostly just getting people's interest about science. I think temporarily, I would say in Malaysia, we don't have that much yet, but I'm sure it is getting more and more in the future. So I think it is wise to say that science communication can be a career in Malaysia in a very near future. Yeah. Dr. Margaret?
Yeah, sorry. I completely agree with what Dr. Yvonne has mentioned just now. I think that Malaysia has great potential for careers in science communication. I also see it being something that you do alongside your career, like what myself and Dr. Yvonne or so many other people have been doing currently. We have another job, but what we do is we have a passion towards science communication. So it can also be something that you do along while having a career. Yes.
Okay, so thanks, Doctor. Without wasting any more time, we have now come to our Q&A session with our audiences. And if anyone has any question, they can unmute themselves and ask your question. But at the meantime, there's a question from the chat from Shafika. Hi, I have a question. How to avoid from people misunderstand science facts? Because nowadays, many people just like to justify something on their own logical thinking. Dr. Margaret?
Okay. Yes, people like this. There are many people like this, but what I always do is, in order to have a communication, you need somebody who's explaining and somebody who's willing to listen. You as a scientist need to listen as well. And the layperson needs to understand what you are trying to explain as well. So the ability of a layperson to be able to understand what you're trying to do, what you're trying to say is a challenge, because sometimes we are so engulfed with very big words, very bombastic words, very technical terms that they don't understand. So when somebody who is not in your field does not understand that, they see that as something to be something foreign, something scary, something not true. So what I would like to personally do is I like to break things down into something which is relatable, something that you can equate with a situation or a scenario, even an item in real life, and then tell them how is that item or how did that scenario help them, and then try to bring it in from a science perspective, and then listen to see what they have to say and what were their concerns, what were their worries about that particular topic or that particular argument that you were trying to put forth.
I agree with that. I think that sometimes when people misunderstand, it's because people have people may impose their perception and kind of block out all the facts that comes to them. So you need that person to listen, that's for sure, and you need to listen to that person. Just like the example that I mentioned just now about polymers, right? In terms of facts, how do you avoid people misunderstanding facts is, you as a scientist, I would say you have a better understanding of science. I mean, you will be able to digest science slightly better. So you will be able to tell the difference between what's right and what's fake science. And so after doing your own research about it, with all the references and figures that you think you're ready to tell that person or to clarify with that person, then bring on those it could be in the form of infographic, it could be in the form of just visuals to explain it slowly in layman terms to that person. You are not trying to impose your perception to that person, but you will open up some choices for them to choose which to believe in once they open their ears. Yeah. So that would be my take on that.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Margaret and Dr. Yvonne. Dr. Yvonne, I got some question for you. Like just now, you got mentioned that you share your how to say, communicate with the kids, right? Is it got any challenges, like got any differences, like you communicate with those kids with science and also adults?
There actually is a difference communicating with kids and communicating with adults. You find that adults have like lots of knowledge beforehand, so they are more of like listening, but they would want to correct you if you're wrong. They would want to, like I said, impose certain concepts, like to rebut what you say. But for kids, their circles are slightly smaller than us at the moment. So what you're telling them, it's more like you are opening up doors for them instead of them. How should I say this? It's like kids are more like white blank papers, and they're ready to accept what you're trying to say. Whereas for adults, yes, we can say that we are blank papers as well, but we're more like used newspapers. Where there are things written on them that they might not accept what you say just like that. Yeah, they will question you in a very different way compared to kids. Kids would be asking, oh, why is that happening like that? Why does it do this? They're curious, that's why they ask. But for adults, it's more like, okay, some adults, they are like children, but some adults are more towards trying to rebut what you say. So it's going to be trickier when it comes to adults. Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Yvonne. Dr. Margaret, do you agree with Dr. Yvonne?
Yes, I do. In fact, I think that children have a very inquisitive childlike behavior. So it's more questions like, oh, why, oh, how, and everything. But some adults, they listen to answer. They don't listen to listen. Some, I wouldn't say all. They don't listen to listen, but they listen to answer. So that is the one difference I would say between adults and children.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Margaret and Dr. Yvonne. Any more questions from the audience? Feel free to ask.
I think
there is a reply from Shafika. Thank you very much, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Okay, so seeing that we are short on time, with that we would like to round up our short forum session with huge thank you to our panels. Sorry for interrupting. I just want to
Okay.
bring out a question from the Facebook Live that I saw. The question asks, what are the factors that are needed to be considered before posting science facts in social media to make the post look attractive?
Dr. Margaret?
Yes.
Okay.
Margaret.
So yeah, I think I covered that during my presentation just now. However, I could just simplify some small tips that I personally use. I would always like to use a personal picture, like what you saw just now, my picture holding the pucuk paku. I also like to make posts personalized. So I start off with a story instead of saying that the formula of blah, blah, blah is that. I would say, what made me write this? So I would go like, on a Monday morning, I found that da la 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 has da 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 da. So I start off like that. I also like to include a joke or two to make the whole flow of the whole post seem very engaging. And then what I would do is I will post it on the dates which are recommended, which we usually do post on Wednesdays. Another just public service announcement, you could all follow the groups that I posted on just now. My personal group is Sembang Science. We do accept that if you want to write anything, you could just post it onto the group and me and my colleagues will go through the post first. We do check for scientific validity in that sense, meaning that you would have to have a reference about your post. So if you're writing something about the health benefits of a banana, for example, we would look out for a post which is related or adapted or taken or referenced from a reputable journal. So we're checking that. That doesn't mean that you copy whatever's written in the journal. That is merely saying that you use what is in the journal as a form of reference for you to tell your story. So, and then we will also be looking at authenticity of your picture, meaning that if you're taking a picture or a photograph of Google, or if somebody took the photograph and you're taking it from somebody, we'll be looking at copywriting issues. Hence, it is best, I always advise to use your own picture that you take with your own phones. Should you not be able to do that, kindly give credit where you have taken the picture from and credit to the article that you have listed. Yeah, but please feel free to write in. Use this as a practice, a test ground for you to submit your post and see how would it fare in the real world. So please feel free to write in and post anything you would want to the group. You could start by joining the group on Facebook. It's called Sembang Science, and also the other groups that I mentioned just now, all of them are equally amazing. So I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Dr. Margaret. Alfred?
Welcome.
Okay, now it's time for our photography session. I would like to request everyone to kindly switch on your camera so we can take a group photo. Make sure to switch on your camera and be prepared for the photo session. There will be a countdown for 10 seconds where our media team will take screenshot of participants from screen to screen. So participants are requested to keep your camera on until the countdown is over. I'll begin with the countdown now. Smile, everyone. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Is the multimedia team done with the screenshot?
Yes, yes.